Imagine that you are the person who was carrying that large window pane that now lies in shattered shards around your feet. You look at the pieces in dismay because you realize that you can no longer put these pieces back to their former smooth, translucent self. But suddenly, a smile lightens your face. You smile because you see forms of mosaic art that these pieces of glass can form. You see that because now you're looking at the spaces between the pieces of glass. This is Dr. Frank Douglas, the host of Reframe for Resilience. Welcome to another episode. Today, our guest is Mr. Ganesh. He is the HR director of Richmond in London, and we are happy to have him here. I had a wonderful pre-interview conversation with him, and one of the things I learned actually is that his grandparents came from what is now Yemen, Aden, which was part of South Yemen, I guess, if I'm correct there. And so I'm sort of curious. Don't be surprised, Mr. Ganesh, if I ask you a question or two to see how that culture reflects on reframing for you. So, Mr. Ganesh, welcome. And could you introduce yourself and tell us a bit of your journey?
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Frank. So as I've been introduced as Bhavesh, I'm the HR director at Richmond. I started on my professional journey back in 2002, where I joined Shell as a graduate. So I joined Shell as a graduate. I was there for the best part of 20 years, in progressively different and more challenging HR roles. I left Shell 3 years ago and I joined Richmond. I got to that point in my career where I wanted to change. I turned 40, reassessing, life and everything within it. And I felt I just wanted a slightly different challenge. I love my time at Shell, would recommend it to anyone considering, but also enjoyed this new part of my life, a new part of my career at Richmond.
Well, that is exciting. 20 years at Shell.
Yes.
Shell is of course, a very large company. Tell us a bit about Richmond, the size of Richmond, and any changes going from Shell to Richmond.
Yeah, absolutely. So Shell, many thousands of people spread around the world. Richmond a lot smaller. So we're 180 um, people strong, based in London Bridge. All of our staff are based in the UK. The vast majority actually on site in London Bridge. We specialize in essentially clinical trials. So we help sponsors, pharmaceutical companies, biotechs to take their drugs to market by helping them test whether they're safe, whether they're effective, and then reporting back on that data. So it's a very good course. Purpose is strong. I feel like we do good in the world in tackling diseases and ill health. Um, so that's what kind of keeps me here. And we've made quite a few changes in the organization since I've been here. Um, and that gives me a sense of pride and accomplishment.
I imagine coming from a very large company to a smaller company, you see some things perhaps differently. Can you share with us one or two
Yeah,
things
of
that,
course. I think the obvious one is pace. Um, the pace is faster at Richmond than it is at Shell. Shell's a massive organization. It takes time to make decisions, given the levels of hierarchy, approvals required, based on what's at stake. Yeah, just in a smaller organization, it's more agile, nimble. Decisions get made quicker, less administration around them as well. Um, I'm not going to say less rigor because there is rigor, but it doesn't need 10 people to approve. We can get one other person to approve, and generally that's enough to then move forward. So definitely pace is one big difference. I think the other one I would say is again size of organization. It's more personal at Richmond. Um, I know pretty much everyone in the organization. Um, and it didn't take me 3 years to get to that point. And so it feels like the relationships are stronger as a result of that. I don't need to rely on my position so much or, the approval level I may have or may not have. A lot of things are done through personal relationships and the strength of the connections.
So, as you think of the large company versus the small company, were there any things in your culture of your parents and grandparents that came to bear?
Yeah, absolutely. My grandparents, my father was born in Aden. They moved to the UK in the 70s. Um, they essentially uprooted their life because they didn't feel the country they'd lived all their life in, and the country their parents had lived in, and were bought and born up in, was safe anymore. So they moved out of necessity, and they moved to a country that they never visited before. They barely knew the language, and so yeah, it was quite a brave decision to take. It took a lot of courage to make such a choice, uh, and so partly growing up as a result. I grew up in quite a traditional household, mother, father, traditional values, risk averse because they're taking a big risk to come to the UK, didn't want to take any more risk. So quite a risk averse upbringing where stability was valued over lots of other things. And so working in Shell, which was also about stability to a large extent, not as risk taking as some other organizations, given what's at stake. Working at Shell felt safe, felt comfortable because it was almost an extension of my upbringing, working in that kind of environment. And so working at Richmond, where there is more risk taking, took me a little bit of time to adjust to. Probably more time than I anticipated initially. And then one day I realized, oh wow, I can just do this, whatever this was. I can just do this. It feels like the right decision to take. I've got good reasons for it. I don't need to ask five other people, spend 6 months in committee meetings. I can just do it. And I realized that I thought, wow, this is a feeling I've not had ever before, particularly in my professional life, but also when you're growing up, you defer to your parents, you defer to your grandparents, the elders, whoever they may be, for these types of things. And then realizing, okay, the buck stops with me. Wow, that's a new sensation. I quite like it.
Were there any strategies once you realized the buck stops with me? Were there any strategies or any approaches that you used to make you feel more comfortable or to adapt, or did you just go into it?
The biggest strategy I've employed is just taking a few seconds, a few moments to ask myself, do I have the backup data, the workings out, if you were, to support this. I think also having a network of people that give you strength and encourage you, give you the confidence to make bold choices and bold decisions. I think that's also been a strategy I've employed. Um, Yeah.
Yeah, it's no, actually, that's I like it. The internal process. Do I have the data, the check on yourself, and the use of the network, where you test against those in your network whom you trust. You check their responses and their reactions. It's interesting. Uh, I remember when I was growing up in school, we were taught that Darwin said it was the survival of the fittest. It turns out that was not what Darwin said. What Darwin said is that the species that best adapts to the environment is the species that survives. And that was what Darwin said. So this adaptability is extremely important. You call it being like a chameleon. Uh, how does that help you as a director of HR? How does that help you in your present task?
I do. I think that approach I've taken means that growing up, I've lived and worked alongside many different people and got on with many different people from all parts of society, from all parts of the world. London's a melting pot of very many different cultures. And so that helps me in my day-to-day work in building relationships, building bonds, being empathetic, um, and from being empathetic, hopefully trying to build some inclusion. Um, and so I think just being around different people all of my life just feels like my job is an extension of my upbringing.
Yeah, it's interesting. I had a guest, another director of HR, who actually said, that in his work and the way he deals with people is the way he deals at home. And and he gave examples. And I thought, that actually that concordance, if you like, between how one lives one's private life and how one interacts with people in the work life is just so very important to be true to oneself. So finally, sorry, you were going to say?
I was going to say, yeah, absolutely. I found myself um, being the same person at home and at work, and it never used to be like that. I used to pride myself on being different, at home and at work. But I think the more senior you get, the more mature you become as well. You realize that takes a lot of time and mental effort. Um, and it's easier to just be yourself. Um, you have to first find out, work out who you are and what that means to be yourself.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Ganesh. I really appreciate your comments. I like the imagery of checking on your internal integrity, testing that against your network of experts and colleagues, and as you look at everything else in the environment, is being adaptable, adapting to the demands of the environment. Thank you very much, and wish you and your family continued success, both at home and at Richmond.
My pleasure. Thank you for the invite, Dr. Douglas. I hope we can talk again soon in the future.
My pleasure too.